A recent UNL Cornhusker Economics article details how China's changing diet towards higher meat consumption has helped U.S. corn and soybean production. But the report also points out more natural resources will be needed to produce even more output. Authored by Azzeddine Azzam and Sarah Raykamp, the article is part of a larger project from UNL's Ag Econ department focused on sustainable consumption. It's partly aimed at helping consumers be more aware of the composition of their diets. As we said when we visited the country in June of last year, China is exceptionally important to U.S. agriculture. Part of the rise is due to China's people making more money and developing appetites for more meat. This UNL research says total Chinese pork consumption has outpaced the U.S. since the mid-1970s and was 6 times higher in 2012, with the average person in China eating 27 pounds of pork more than the average American. As you'll hear, this changing food demand in the world's most populous country puts an emphasis on both production and efficiency in the U.S.
Well, this is a small project. It's part of a larger project under the title of sustainable consumption. And the idea is to shift the emphasis or research from sustainable production, which everybody knows about, and that is on the producer side. Now, sustainable consumption has to do about the environmental performance of goods and services on the consumer side. So if you develop a program where you can teach consumers about how the composition of their diet actually affects the environment, we are hoping that that may lead to some choices that are eco-friendly. So that's what...
Specifically to China, tell me about their diet and how the rise in China's middle class changed where they took their diet to.
Okay. Chinese diet mix conforms to something that we refer to as Bennett's Law. What Bennett's Law said is that as countries get wealthier over time, what they do, they change the mix of their diet from a diet that is dominated, plant-based, to a diet that has more variety, and usually it is meat-based. So if you look at China's income, let's say in 1980 it was around $193 or $200. Now we're talking about $6,000. So during that period of time, if you look at the graphs in the article, what you see is that there is a change in the composition of the diet of the Chinese. Now, meat as a proportion of total calories is about 22%, which compares to about 27% in the United States.
And that makes a huge implication for when you look at importing grains from
Absolutely.
the U.S., from the South. How important is China to U.S. soybean production, and could it become that important for U.S. corn production?
Well, based on the figures we know now, we know that China imports about 60% of all the soybeans in the world and about 25% of all the soybeans of the United States. So that is very crucial for their animal production. You have to realize what happened in China a long time ago when China was still slowly growing. Pigs were really pretty much, I hope I'm not using the wrong euphemism here, was the garbage disposal for pig growers in China. But that has changed over time. I mean, the information I have is that they are moving also toward industrialization of agriculture. And the company's name that comes up once in a while to illustrate this shift is a company called Yuron in China. So as they move toward industrialized agriculture, the logical consequence of that is demand for feed grains. Well, they produce soybeans. Okay, my figures that I had here in 2011. In 1995, they used to produce 14 million tons of soybeans and consume 14 million tons of soybean. They still produce those 14 million tons of soybeans, but now they're importing about 70 million tons. So that is really good news for U.S. farmers. Having said that, there are also competitors that would like to get into the U.S., in the Chinese market as far as soybean exports.
As big as China is right now to soybean production and what role it plays in corn, could it become even bigger, do you feel?
You know, projections are projections, yes. I mean, if we go by Bennett's Law, and these laws are not inviolable, but to use as a guideline, is that as China gets richer, the diet composition is going to change. You know, so the question, do they have enough land? Do they have enough resources to meet the feed grain? You know, you should realize, I mean, you realize that China is surpasses the United States as feed grain production, but that's still not enough to feed their own animals. By the way, including aquaculture, because they also feed fish. So all these soybean products are very important for them.
So part of your report is looking at how it can be a mixed blessing, and obviously with China's demand for soybeans, that puts a tighter supply, kind of like the U.S. is seeing with a tighter cattle supply. That leads to higher prices in the stores, and that's part of what you're looking at as well, too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, there are, okay, like where are these soybeans going to come from, and what are the consequences? Well, the mixed blessing, and this is really an idea that's not new to me. Something is called the boomerang effect. You know, the Boston Consulting Group has come up with this name to characterize what's going on in China. The idea is that as demand increases for soybeans, somebody has to produce them. Now, the mixed blessing, farmers will do very well, but it is going to put some stress on some of the natural resources that are required to produce that. Now, I want to make an addendum on this so people don't misunderstand when it comes to water. I really understand that a large proportion of corn and soybeans in the United States is rain-fed, okay? I think the figures that have been mentioned to me is that about only 12 to 16% of corn is irrigated in the United States and probably 8 to 9% in soybeans. So the fact that a large proportion of corn and soybeans are rain-fed, I don't want people to misunderstand that that's what I mean by stress and water. Because you come to our state, a large proportion of that corn is being irrigated. So the stress is going to be really location specific, and this is what I'm really referring to.
And as more allocations come to states like Nebraska, that's going to put more stress on finding technological advancements and efficiency in the agricultural world.
That's where UNL comes in. I mean, that's part of our agenda. They are working, I want to bring back the sustainability issue. What I see our mission here at UNL and INR in particular is that we're working on issues of sustainable production, and that's the job of a university. But at the same time, we're also going to take a look at sustainable consumption, so consumers also can learn about what is it that they can do as far as diet, or at least make them aware how their diet choices not only affect their health. A lot of us worry about obesity and worry about issues like that. But it will be very nice to make some sort of a cognitive shift where when you and I go shopping, we think very carefully about the fossil fuel content, about of that food that we buy. And I can go on, but local foods in Nebraska will figure in this discussion too. About sustainable consumption.